So we are talking about data, and I told there are different types of data. There are different types of data, which is
Numbers.
numbers, text, photos, videos, and all of that, right? So in the same way, Python does provide different varieties of data, so which we call it as data types,
Numbers.
right? Now, yes, we know what is data, and we also know that there are varieties of data, like there are numbers, there are text, there is
Mhm.
photos, there are videos, and so on. Now, Python as a programming language should be able to handle all of them, and hence it does provide different types to handle the different types of the data. So the first one that we have is
Numbers.
numbers. So under numbers, you always have two types of numbers. What are they?
Zeros and ones.
Mhm. Zero is a number, one is a number, but there are two types of data numbers.
Prime.
Decimal. Whole numbers or decimal. So whole numbers is something like 1, 2, 3, and so on. Decimal numbers are something like 1.5, 2.02, 3.0004. Right? These are all decimal numbers. Right? So the whole numbers are called
Integer value.
integers, and the fraction or decimal values, or you can basically call them as decimals or float values,
Mhm.
right? Floating point. So any number which has point and certain data to it, it is basically a float. Is base. So as I was saying, there are whole numbers and then there are decimal numbers. The whole numbers you can call them as integers, and anything
Mhm.
which has a fraction or a decimal, you can call it as a decimal number or a float number. Okay,
Okay.
this is one way to have. This is one type of data to handle number. The second data type that we have is string. The second data type that we have is string. Now, what is a string? So one is to handle numbers, and string is to handle alphabets. So alphabets such as, like, anything capital A to Z, right? Small a to Z, any of the special characters such as star, dollar, right? At the rate, any of these special characters has to be we has to be so all of these things we call them as strings. Anything apart from number, like such as alphabets and all, we call them as strings, right? Example, so here the number example for number is, I can just say a is equal to 10, b is equal to 20.50, and so on. Example for string is that name is equal to Ram. So there is a way that if you see, notice here, right? Okay, now if you notice here, integers, I am not using any quotation marks. If you see, right, I am using a quotation mark for strings, but integer, I'm the numbers, I'm not doing that. I'm directly assigning a equal to 10, b equal to 20, and so on. But whereas for strings, I'm using this double quotation marks. Right? Are we clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, anything alphabet related are strings. Okay, so the third data type that we have, or we'll be
List.
looking at, is list.
List.
Okay, so now Let us say I know numbers and I know a string. So if I want to have, if I want to, so one variable can store what? One variable can store one value. One variable, one value. Are we clear?
Sir.
Yes, sir.
Right. So I cannot do this like, I cannot, for example, in the variable called name, I cannot write Ram, Som, Beam or whatever, right? I cannot store multiple values into single variable, right? If I want to store multiple values into a single variable, a normal data types cannot handle it, such as numbers or strings. Then I need some special data type which can help me to store multiple values into a single variable. So that is where we take the help of an built-in data type called list. Right? In other programming languages, you can always say that as an array. Okay. Now, what do we do? So here, so for example, students is equal to, I am using, see, these are all basically syntax, right? So for numbers, we are not using any double quotation marks as such. So you can directly say number. And for string, as I said, we have to use a double quotation marks, where within that I am between the double quotation marks, we are writing our alphabets. And in the same way, for another data type called list, even it comes with its own syntax. So what is that? I am using a square bracket. I'm using a square bracket. And between that, I'm writing my values. For example, Ram, Som, Beam, and then I'm closing it. So here it is between the square brackets, I am able to define multiple values. So one is Ram, one string, the second string is Som, and the third string is Beam. You can write, you can store as many values as you want to. Okay. And if it is a list, the only thing that you have to remember is that it has to be enclosed within the square bracket. It has to be enclosed within the square bracket. Okay, so we will see in detail on each one of these data types going further. Now today, since I have to introduce you to the data types, I am going through all the data types and giving you a very high level introduction on each of it. Okay, then we have a thing called dictionary. So what is a dictionary? What is a dictionary? So in general English, right? So what is a dictionary?
It's a
I
record of
don't,
some data.
it is what?
It's a record of some data, sir.
You
Where we
all
can
have a
find.
dictionary at home where if you want to know a meaning of something, what will you do? You open a book, and that is basically a dictionary which translates from one language to another language. Yes, that is a
Yes, sir.
dictionary,
Yes, sir.
right? In the same way, here also we have something called dictionary. This is also useful to store more than one value into a single variable. Then it is slightly different from the list, right? So here I would just say like student. So here we would be using something called flower bracket. So this, for list, what we have is a square bracket. For dictionary, what we have is a flower bracket. So within this, we always have something called right? So you can have multiple key and value. So we call it as a key and value. So when you are checking in a dictionary, right? So you would always know what you have to look for. And after that, you find that word and then find the meaning of it. Right. So when you don't understand a particular word, you open the dictionary, look for that word, and then you find the meaning and then understand it. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Right. So which means the word that you're looking for is basically called as key, and the meaning that you will get for that word is basically called value, is basically called value. So dictionary is a data structure. Dictionary is a data type where we can store key and value, where we can store key and value. In arrays, you are only in array or list, you are only able to store values alone. So here you are storing key and value. And here the syntax for list is a square bracket and the syntax for dictionary is a flower bracket. Are we clear with that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. And the fifth data type we have is we call it as
Tuple.
tuple. It is just like an array, but here the syntax would be something like this. I'm creating a variable called students, and here it is a parenthesis. So if at all I'm using a parenthesis, which means it is a tuple, and if I'm using a square bracket, which means it is a list, which means it is a list. We will see it deeply into what is a tuple and all of that. But for now, the only thing I want you guys to focus and understand is that just the syntactical difference, just the syntactical difference. So as list uses a square bracket, dictionary uses a flower bracket, tuple uses a parenthesis. Tuple uses a
Param.
parenthesis. Okay, I just want you guys to just know that basic difference. Know that basic difference. Sixth, we have something called set. Sixth, we have something called set. Set also uses a flower bracket, but it doesn't use a key value. It just uses values. It doesn't use key value, but it just uses values. In the same between the flower brackets, if you put a key and a value, then that becomes a dictionary. And if you just put a value, then that becomes a set. Then that becomes a set. Okay. Set generally, the important thing here is it will not allow duplicates. I cannot add duplicates into my set. We will see detail in going further, but you have to just understand. Set basically doesn't allow duplicates. Now, so we are we clear with the syntactical differences here? So for numbers, there is nothing. There is a variable and there is a value. No quotations, no square bracket, no flower bracket, nothing. That is number for us. Okay. For strings, you have to place double quotation marks around the alphabets. Then it is basically considered as a string. And if it is a list, in the list, you can place strings or numbers. But the thing is, it has to be enclosed with a square bracket.
Nuggets.
Dictionary is another data type. Here we use flower bracket to store not just value, but to store key and value pairs. Key and value pairs. Now tuple is also just like a list, except it uses parentheses in place of square bracket. Set also uses a very similar syntax as a dictionary, which is the flower bracket, but whereas dictionary will be able to store key and value, whereas your set will be able to store only values or only keys, but not a key and value. So if you want to use a key and value, you will go with a dictionary. If you just want to store like unique values without any duplicates, then you will go with set. Are we clear so far?
Yes, sir.
Okay, do not worry if you don't understand any of this. We will look deeply on each and every concept here. Okay,
Okay.
this is a very, very high level because it is a data type. I have to tell you what are the different data types that are available in Python today. And seventh one is bytes. We have something called bytes. So what can I store in bytes? So it is basically your images, your videos, and so on, any of the documents, right? So this is all a binary data. So this information will be stored in something called bytes, stored in a data type called bytes. Are we clear? So these are the 7 different data types that we have in Python. So along with that, you also have two more things. One is called Boolean. What is a Boolean? It is basically has two values, either true or either false. True is nothing but yes, false is nothing but no, right? And another data type called none. None. So none means basically nothing. If I just say A is equal to none, it means A doesn't have anything. It is just an empty thing, right? None
The
means none. It
difference,
does. What was that?
sir, Trojan sets, difference between set and Trojan set.
That we will see later. Okay,
Okay.
right? So these are the primary data types that we have: numbers, strings, list, dictionary, tuple, set, bytes, boolean, and none. Are we clear with this?
Yes, sir.
Everybody?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
See, again, I'm repeating, it is not necessary that you should know each of it. No, I'm just basically telling you what are the available data types, right? We will still start with numbers. Okay, but these are all the available data types that are there in Python. I'm just giving you slight basically I'm giving you the slight names of it. Okay, there is something called string. Okay, there is something called list. There is something called dictionary. Okay, we will check each one of it in detail. But for now, just go with it. Okay, just say, okay, there is something called string, there is something called list, dictionary, tuple, set, bytes, boolean, and num. We will see each one of it as we go further. Okay,
Okay.
right. So as I was saying, let us start with the first data type, which is nothing but numbers. Now you can open your IDLE. You can open your IDLE and just type A is equal to 10 and say B is equal to 20, right? Which means I am assigning value 10 to a variable called A and value 20 to a variable called B. And you just say print A plus B, and this would basically print value 30 for you. Can you quickly try this?
30.
Let me know once you are able to just get this very tiny variables created, and then with that print statement returns 30 or not.
Yes, 30.
It is
Okay.
30.
30.
Sir,
Okay.
got it.
Right. Now I want to check what is the data type of it. I know variable a is holding value 10. By looking at it, I can say it is storing an integer value, but I want to be sure, okay, is it an integer? Okay, then if I want to know what is the data type of it, if I want to know what is the data type of any given variable, I'll use some just like print, right? There is another helpful function which will basically tell us what is the data type of a given variable. That function name is basically called type. That function name is called type. So just say print, okay, type, and within the parenthesis pass that variable. Print, then type, and within the parenthesis pass the variable a, and then close the parenthesis and close the print statements parenthesis also. Then what does it say? If you just say print type of a, what does it say? What is the output?
Class int.
Does it say something like this?
Class int.
Class int?
Class int.
So which means int means basically nothing but
Int value. Integer value.
integer. Okay. Now let us say I create one more variable. X is equal to 50.50. 50.50. Can you just print the type of this? What does it say? What does it say?
Class
50.50. It is not integer.
floats.
50.50. Isn't it a
Float value.
float value?
Yeah, yeah, float value.
Float is nothing but any fractional value or a decimal value, right? There is a whole number and there is a decimal number. So whole number is something like which doesn't have any fractions to it, whereas any number which has fraction is basically called as float or decimal or double. So it has, you can refer to this as same thing. So you can call it as float, or you can call it as decimal, or you can call it as double. So all of this works out for any of the digit which has basically called basically a fractional number. Okay, now I want there are two functions that as you have started programming today. So you were able to define a variable, you were able to assign a value to it, you were able to do the sum of those two variables, and you were able to check the output of it in the in the ideally. And you are also using a function called print. You are also using a function called print, which is basically printing the output of any given expression. So this is an expression a plus b, I can say as a expression. Okay, now it is understanding this expression. Okay, there is a plus operator between this variable 1 and variable 2, which means I have to add these two values, and then Python language understands it, executes it, and then returns an output which is 30, and that 30 is printed in the interface because we have used a function called print, basically printing the value onto the interface. Are we good? Are we clear?
Yes.
In the same way, print is a function used to what? It is used to print values. It is used to print values or data. Okay. In the same way, now what is type? What is type? We discussed about print. Yes, wonderful. Now what is type? Type is a function used to know Are we clear? Type is a function used to know the data type of an variable. Are we clear with this?
Yes, sir.
So there
Yes,
are
sir.
two functions. Print is function of the print is to print some value onto the screen, whereas types function is to tell what is the data type of a given variable Are we clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, done.
Yes.